The crystal chandelier above table 7 had a crack in it that nobody else seemed to notice. I'd stared at it every shift for the past 3 months, watching the fractured light scatter across white tablecloths like broken promises. Tonight, that crack felt like an omen. My fingers trembled as I smoothed down the black cocktail dress I'd changed into after my shift ended. The fabric clung to curves I'd forgotten I had, buried under months of oversized sweaters and voluntary invisibility. The scent of jasmine from my wrists, a perfume I hadn't worn in half a year, mixed with the restaurant's signature ambiance, aged wine, fresh roses, and the kind of money that whispered rather than shouted. "You look beautiful, Emma." David's voice cut through my anxiety, warm and uncomplicated in a way I'd almost forgotten existed. I forced a smile across the table, studying the man who'd asked me to stay after my shift ended. David Chen was safe, a regular customer, a corporate lawyer with kind eyes and a patient smile, who'd been leaving generous tips and gentle compliments for weeks before finally asking me to dinner. Nothing like, "No, I wouldn't think about him tonight. Thank you," I murmured, reaching for my water glass. The ice clinked against crystal, a delicate sound that somehow felt too loud. "I haven't done this in a while. Neither have I," David admitted, and his honesty made something tight in my chest loosen slightly. My colleague said I was crazy, asking out the most beautiful woman in Manhattan while she was literally serving me soup. I laughed, and it sounded foreign to my own ears. When was the last time I'd laughed, really laughed? Not the hollow sound I'd perfected for customer service? The restaurant hummed around us with Friday night energy. Lucia's was the kind of establishment where politicians made deals, where engagement rings appeared over chocolate soufflé, where I'd worked double shifts for 3 months to avoid going home to an apartment that echoed with memories I couldn't afford to keep. "Emma?" David's concerned voice pulled me back. "You okay? We can leave if you're not comfortable." "No, I'm fine, really." I straightened in my chair, willing myself to be present, to be normal. To be the woman I used to be before 6 months of heaven and hell had carved out pieces of my soul I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. "Tell me about your case. The one with the pharmaceutical company?" As David launched into an explanation, I found myself relaxing incrementally. His voice was steady, predictable. There was no undercurrent of danger, no weight of unspoken threats, no bodyguards lurking in shadows, no sudden phone calls that would end our evening without explanation. This was what normal people did. They went on dates. They talked about work and hobbies and mundane, beautiful things that didn't involve blood or territory or debts paid in ways that still made me wake up screaming. I was safe now. I'd made sure of it. The air conditioning kicked on and goosebumps rose on my bare arms. I'd picked this dress deliberately. Soft blue, modest neckline, nothing like the designer labels that had filled the closet in the penthouse I'd fled from. This dress was mine, bought with my own money, worn by my own choice. Freedom looked like a $40 clearance rack dress and tasted like cheap wine I'd ordered myself. "You're miles away again," David observed gently, setting down his fork. "Want to talk about it?" "About what?" "Whatever. Or whoever. Put that look in your eyes." My heart stuttered. "I don't know what you—" "It's okay." He held up his hands in surrender. "I'm not asking you to explain. I just want you to know that I see you, Emma, and whatever you're running from, you don't have to run alone." The kindness in his voice nearly undid me. I blinked rapidly, refusing to let tears fall. Not here. Not when I'd worked so hard to build these walls. "Thank you," I whispered. Our waiter appeared. Marcus, who I'd trained with when I first started, and I watched him set down our entrees with the kind of precision Lucia demanded. The scent of herb-crusted salmon filled the space between David and me, mixing with rosemary and lemon and possibility. This could work. This could be the start of something normal, something safe. I lifted my fork, determined to enjoy this moment, this small rebellion against the life I'd left behind. That's when I felt it. The shift in the air was subtle, like the moment before lightning strikes. The temperature seemed to drop despite the warm restaurant, and conversations at nearby tables faltered mid-sentence. I knew that feeling the way prey knows a predator has entered the clearing. My fork clattered against porcelain. "Emma?" David leaned forward. "What's wrong?" I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My entire body had gone rigid with a recognition so bone-deep, it bypassed rational thought entirely. He was here. I didn't need to turn around to know. I could feel his presence like a physical weight, pressing against my spine, stealing oxygen from my lungs. After 3 months of silence, 3 months of freedom, 3 months of convincing myself I'd escaped. "Emma, you're scaring me." David's hand reached across the table toward mine. "Don't touch me," I wanted to scream. Don't give him a reason, but it was too late. The moment David's fingers brushed mine, I heard it. The sound that still haunted my nightmares. The measured click of Italian leather shoes against hardwood, slow and deliberate. A predator's approach. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, a butterfly pinned to velvet, as those footsteps grew closer. The restaurant had gone peculiarly quiet. I noticed it peripherally. The way conversations died, the way even Marcus had stopped mid-service, his face pale as he recognized whoever was approaching. "Emma." David's voice had changed, gained an edge of concern that made him sound younger than his 35 years. "Do you know someone here?" I managed to shake my head, a lie that tasted like ash. The footsteps stopped. I could smell him now. That distinctive cologne, custom-blended and obscenely expensive. Cedar and smoke and something darker that I'd never been able to name. It mixed with the scent of power, of danger, of everything I'd tried to forget. "Excuse me." The voice came from directly behind me, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as dangerous. American accent with the barest hint of something else, something that spoke to heritage and old-world violence. "I believe you're sitting in my table." My eyes closed. God, I'd missed that voice. God, I'd hated that I missed it. David bristled. "I'm sorry, but we reserved this table." "There must be some mistake. The mistake," that voice continued, still addressed to David but burning into the back of my neck like a brand, "is thinking you could sit across from what belongs to me." The possessive pronoun hit me like a physical blow. I forced myself to turn. Alessandro Vitale stood 3 feet away, and time hadn't diminished him at all. If anything, 3 months had honed him into something even more dangerous. 6'3" of tailored menace in a suit that cost more than I made in a year. Charcoal gray that somehow made his dark eyes look black in the restaurant's lighting. His jaw was carved granite, his cheekbones sharp enough to cut. And that mouth, that beautiful, cruel mouth, was set in a line that promised violence. But it was his eyes that destroyed me. Dark, fathomless, and burning with something between fury and hunger that made my knees weak even sitting down. Behind him, I could see Marco and Vincent, his ever-present shadows. Both men were dressed in dark suits. Both had the kind of bulges under their jackets that spoke to concealed weapons, and both were watching David with the focused attention of wolves sizing up prey. Alessandro. His name escaped my lips before I could stop it, barely a whisper, and I watched something flash across his face. Triumph? Pain? Cucciola. Little one. The endearment fell from his lips like a caress and a curse combined. "Did you really think you could hide from me in my own city?" David stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "Look, I don't know who you are." Alessandro's gaze finally left me, sliding to David with the lazy attention of a predator noticing an insect. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The look alone made David take an involuntary step backward. "Sit down," Alessandro said quietly. To my horror, David sat. That's when I knew nothing had changed. Alessandro Vitale commanded rooms the way other men breathed, effortlessly, absolutely. The man who controlled half of New York's underground, who made politicians nervous and police commissioners disappear, who'd held my heart in hands stained with blood and sin. The man I'd loved. The man I'd fled from. The man who was looking at me now like I'd committed the ultimate betrayal. "Who is this guy?" David managed, his voice strangled, looking between us with growing understanding and fear. I opened my mouth to answer, but Alessandro moved. 3 strides brought him to my side of the table, and suddenly he was there, his hand on the back of my chair, his presence overwhelming every sense I possessed. "I'm the man," Alessandro said softly, leaning down until his breath ghosted across my ear, sending traitorous shivers down my spine. Who's going to burn this entire restaurant to the ground if you don't stand up right now and walk out with me? My hands clenched in my lap. You can't. I can. His voice dropped even lower, intimate and terrifying. I own this restaurant, Emma. I own the building. I own everything and everyone in it. A pause that felt like eternity. Except apparently you. The words were a whip crack against old wounds. Alessandro, please. I finally looked up at him, meeting those dark eyes that had watched me fall apart and put myself back together 100 times. Don't do this. Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or rage so profound it had nowhere to go but inward. Don't? He straightened, his hand moving from my chair to my bare shoulder, and I felt the touch like an electrical current. His fingers were warm, possessive, familiar. You disappeared. 3 months, Emma. 3 months of silence while I tore this city apart looking for you, and I find you here, dressed like this. His eyes raked over my dress, my loose hair, my carefully applied makeup. For him? The jealousy in his voice was molten, dangerous. Mr. Vitale. David tried again, and I had to give him credit for his courage, even as I wished desperately that he'd stay silent. Alessandro's free hand moved, a subtle gesture, and Marco stepped forward. The message was clear. Emma works here, David continued, his voice shaking but determined. We're just having dinner. There's nothing. Nothing? Alessandro's laugh was devoid of humor. You're trying to take what's mine, and you call it nothing. I'm not yours, I managed, even as his touch burned through my dress. Not anymore. The words hung in the air between us, and I watched Alessandro's expression shudder completely. This was the face he wore when ordering executions, when negotiating deals worth millions, when deciding fates with the casual finality of a god. Stand up, Emma. It wasn't a request. No. His fingers tightened on my shoulder. Stand up, or I have Marco escort your friend outside. And we both know how those escorts end. Ice flooded my veins. He wouldn't. Not in public, not here. But looking into his eyes, I saw the truth. Alessandro Vitale would burn the world for many reasons, but jealousy was a particularly volatile fuel. My chair scraped as I stood on shaking legs. Emma, don't. David started to rise again. Stay. I held up my hand, my voice breaking. Please, David. Just stay. I saw the moment he understood. The moment he realized exactly who Alessandro was, what he was, and what his presence in my life meant. The color drained from his face, but he nodded slowly, sinking back into his chair. Alessandro's hand moved from my shoulder to the small of my back, proprietary and inescapable. Smart man, Alessandro murmured, already guiding me away from the table. I let him lead me through the restaurant, past tables of people who suddenly found their meals fascinating, past Marcus who wouldn't meet my eyes, past the hostess stand where Lucia herself stood with her phone pressed to her ear and terror written across her face. The night air hit me when we exited onto Fifth Avenue, cool and sharp, mixing with the scent of car exhaust and street vendors. A black SUV idled at the curb, and I didn't need to look to know it was armored, bulletproof, worth more than most people's houses. Vincent opened the rear door, his face impassive. Get in the car, Emma. Alessandro's voice was still quiet, still controlled, but I could hear the rage simmering beneath. Where are you taking me? Home. The word was final, absolute. I have a home. That apartment in Brooklyn? His eyes flashed. The one with the broken lock and the fire escape any idiot could climb? That's not a home. That's a coffin I allowed you to live in while I waited for you to come to your senses. The admission that he'd known where I was this entire time, that he'd been watching, waiting. It should have terrified me. Instead, treacherously, it made my heart race for entirely different reasons. I'm not getting in that car, I said, even as I felt the inevitability of this moment crushing down. Alessandro stepped closer, eliminating the space between us, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see the shadows under his eyes, the new lines bracketing his mouth. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 3 months. He looked like I felt. You will, he said softly, because if you don't, I will throw you over my shoulder and put you in myself, and then I will go back into that restaurant and have a conversation with David Chen that he won't survive. The threat hung between us, real and terrible. You're a monster, I whispered. Yes. His hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was. But I'm your monster, Kuchela, and you knew that when you let me fall in love with you. Before I could respond, before I could process the bomb he'd just dropped, he guided me into the SUV. I fell into leather seats that smelled like him, into a cage I'd escaped once before. Alessandro slid in beside me, and Vincent closed the door with a finality that sounded like a cell locking. As the SUV pulled into traffic, Alessandro turned to me, and I saw it clearly for the first time. The fury, yes, but beneath it, something raw and bleeding. Who is he? The question was barely controlled. Tell me his name again so I can decide how slowly he dies. And I realized, with a sinking horror, that my attempt at freedom had just condemned an innocent man. Word count. 2089, bloco concluído. Aguardo sua autorização para continuar com o bloco 2. Ok 10:52. EM perfeito. Continuando com o bloco 2. Block 2. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, streaking gold and red across Alessandro's face like war paint. He hadn't looked at me since his question hung unanswered between us, his jaw so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. His hands rested on his thighs, deceptively calm, but I knew better. I'd seen those hands gentle and destructive in equal measure. His name is David Chen, I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. He's a lawyer, corporate law. He has nothing to do with your world, Alessandro. He doesn't even know who you are. He knows now. The words were clipped, final. Everyone in that restaurant knows now. By morning, all of Manhattan will know that Emma Castellano went on a date with a dead man walking. Don't call me that. The surname hit like a slap. I never took your name. We were never married? He turned to me finally, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. No, Kuchela. We were something much more binding than that. The SUV took a corner smoothly, Marco driving with the practiced ease of someone who'd navigated these streets 1,000 times, while his boss conducted business in the back seat. I didn't want to think about what kind of business. Where are we going? I asked, though part of me already knew. I told you. Home, the penthouse. Not a question. Where else would I take you? His hand moved and I flinched involuntarily. The reaction made him freeze, something like pain crossing his features before the mask slammed back down. I'm not going to hurt you, Emma. You just threatened to kill a man for buying me dinner. That's different. His hand completed its journey to my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with devastating tenderness. Hurting him protects you. I would never hurt you. The logic was insane, twisted. Pure Alessandro. In his world, violence and love weren't opposites. They were different expressions of the same obsessive devotion. I turned away from his touch, staring out the window as we crossed into Midtown. You can't keep me prisoner. Can I? The question was mild, almost curious. You left, Emma. You walked out of the safest place in New York and moved into a building where 3 muggings happened last month. You took a job at a restaurant where drunk men proposition you every night. You went on a date with a stranger who could have been anyone, done anything. He's not a stranger, and I can take care of myself, like you did tonight. His voice hardened. Sitting there in that dress, smiling at him like you weren't terrified. I saw your hands shaking when you reached for your water. I saw you flinch every time someone walked past your table. You're not safe, Emma. You've never been safe. Not since the moment you witnessed. Don't. I cut him off. Don't use that as an excuse. You know what happened that night isn't why I left. Silence filled the car, heavy and suffocating. The night I'd witnessed Alessandro execute a traitor in his own office was the night that should have sent me running. But it wasn't. God help me, it wasn't. I'd understood that violence, had even accepted it in some dark corner of my soul that recognized justice when it wore a 3-piece suit. No. I'd left for a much simpler, much more terrifying reason. I'd left because I was falling so completely into Alessandro Vitale's world that I was losing myself. Because every time he touched me, I forgot why loving him was dangerous. Because I'd started to crave the cage he'd built around me, gilded and suffocating and perfect. I'd left because staying meant surrendering completely, and I wasn't sure I'd survive that kind of obliteration. The SUV pulled into an underground garage I remembered too well. Private entrance, biometric security, the kind of protection that cost millions and kept out everyone except the ghosts of memory. "I won't go up," I said, as Marco put the car in park. "You can't make me." Alessandro's laugh was dark. "Emma, I've moved heaven and earth to find you. I've had men watching every bus station, every train platform, every airport within 200 miles. I've reviewed footage from 1,000 security cameras. I've bought information from sources I wouldn't trust with anything else. And you think I'll let you walk away now because you won't cooperate?" The obsession in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it awoke something equally dark inside me, something that whispered he'd done all that because I mattered, because I was important enough to move heaven and earth for. I hated that part of myself. Vincent opened my door, his face carefully neutral. "Ma'am." The honorific was new, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'd just forgotten how Alessandro's men treated me, like I was something precious and dangerous, a weapon their boss kept close. I stepped out because staying in the car was pointless. The elevator waited, all mirrored walls and soft lighting that made me look like a ghost of the woman I'd been 3 months ago. Alessandro's hand found the small of my back again as we entered, and I noticed Marco and Vincent didn't follow. The doors closed, sealing us in, and the elevator began its smooth ascent to the penthouse that occupied the entire 42nd floor. "You've lost weight," Alessandro said quietly, his eyes tracing my reflection. "You're not eating enough." "I eat fine." "Liar." His fingers pressed slightly into my back. "I know what you look like healthy, Emma. This isn't it." The elevator climbed in silence, punctuated only by my racing heartbeat. 20 floors. 30. 40. "Did you miss me?" The question came out of nowhere, vulnerable in a way Alessandro rarely allowed himself to be. I closed my eyes. Every day. I felt him move closer, felt his breath on my neck. "Then why did you leave?" "Because missing you was better than losing myself in you." The elevator chimed, announcing our arrival to the penthouse. The doors opened onto the private foyer I'd walked through 100 times. All Italian marble and original artwork worth more than small countries. Nothing had changed. The orchids I'd loved still bloomed in their crystal vases. The scent of bergamot from the diffuser still perfumed the air. Even the lighting was the same, warm and intimate, designed to make this fortress feel like a home. It had never been a home. It had been a beautiful prison, and I'd loved it anyway. Alessandro guided me inside, his hand never leaving my back, as if afraid I'd disappear if he stopped touching me. The main living area stretched before us. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Furniture that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. And everywhere, the evidence of wealth so profound it became invisible to those who lived with it. "Drink?" Alessandro asked, already moving toward the bar. "I want to leave." He poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a crystal tumbler, the amber liquid catching the light. "No, you don't. You want to leave. There's a difference." The accuracy of that statement stole my breath. He crossed back to me, holding out the glass. When I didn't take it, he set it on the coffee table and stood before me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "I'm going to ask you a question," he said softly. "And I want the truth, Emma. Not what you think I want to hear, not what you think will keep your lawyer friend alive. The truth." My pulse hammered. What question? Did he touch you? His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but the danger in it was unmistakable. "Did David Chen put his hands on what belongs to me?" "I don't belong to—" His hand shot out, gripping my chin with just enough pressure to cut off my protest. "Did he touch you?" The jealousy radiating from him was palpable, a living thing that filled the space between us. I could lie. Should lie. Protecting David meant telling Alessandro nothing had happened, but looking into those dark eyes, I knew the truth would be safer than any lie I could construct. He held my hand, I whispered. Once. For maybe 5 seconds. That's all. Something feral flashed across Alessandro's face. His grip on my chin tightened fractionally before he released me, stepping back and running his hand through his hair. A gesture of frustration I remembered too well. 5 seconds, he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. 5 seconds of his skin on yours, and I want to rip out his throat with my bare hands. Alessandro, do you have any idea? He spun back to me, and I saw the careful control shattering. Do you have any concept of what these 3 months have been like, knowing you were out there, unprotected? Knowing other men could look at you, approach you, touch you. I've killed men for less, Emma. I've burned down empires for less. That's exactly why I left, the words burst out of me. Because this isn't love, Alessandro. This is obsession. This is possession. This is everything. He cut me off, closing the distance between us in 2 strides. This is everything, and you know it. You felt it too, or you wouldn't have run. You would have just walked away. His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking my cheekbones, with a gentleness that contradicted the intensity in his eyes. People who don't care just leave, Cucciola. They don't flee in the middle of the night. They don't change their phone number and delete their social media and disappear like ghosts. They don't run like their life depends on it. He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching mine. You ran because staying meant admitting this thing between us isn't normal or safe or sane. You ran because loving me scares you more than anything else in this world. Tears burned behind my eyes. Yes. The admission hung between us, raw and honest. I scare you, he said, not a question. Terrify me. Good. His mouth curved into something that might have been a smile on anyone else. Fear means you understand what you mean to me, what I would do to keep you. What I will do now that I have you back. You can't keep me here. People will ask questions. I have a job, a life. You had a job. He corrected gently. I bought Lucia's an hour ago. You're officially on indefinite personal leave, full pay, benefits maintained. The breath left my lungs. You can't just... I can. I did. He released my face, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. Your landlord was very understanding when I explained that your lease would be terminated early. Your possessions are being packed as we speak. They'll be here by morning. The systematic destruction of my freedom should have sent me into panic. Instead, I felt a treacherous relief that I immediately hated myself for. This is kidnapping, I said weakly. This is protection. He turned back to me, and his expression held something between tenderness and terror. 3 months ago, someone tried to use you to get to me. Did you forget that? Did you forget the bullet that shattered the car window 6 inches from your head? Did you forget the note they left, detailing exactly how they'd make you suffer to hurt me? I hadn't forgotten. The memory still woke me up screaming. You left before I could eliminate the threat, Alessandro continued. You left while there were still people out there who knew your face, knew your name, knew exactly how to destroy me. He crossed back to me, and I saw genuine fear beneath the anger. Do you understand what that did to me? Knowing you were vulnerable and I couldn't protect you, I was careful. You were visible. His voice finally rose. You worked in a public restaurant. You lived in a building with no security. You went on dates with men whose backgrounds you didn't check, whose families you didn't investigate, whose loyalties you couldn't verify. Because that's what normal people do, Alessandro. Normal people don't run background checks on everyone they meet. Normal people don't live in fortresses. Normal people get hurt. He finished quietly. Normal people become collateral damage in wars they don't even know are being fought. Normal people die, Emma, and I will not let you be one of them. The protective fury in his voice broke something inside me. This was why I'd fallen for him. Not the money or the power or the danger, but this. The absolute, unwavering certainty that I mattered, that I was worth protecting, worth obsessing over, worth moving heaven and earth for. In Alessandro's world, I wasn't invisible. I was everything. I can't live like this, I whispered, even as I felt myself surrendering. trapped in a gilded cage, waiting for you to decide when I can breathe, where I can go, who I can see. Then we'll negotiate." He pulled me against him, and I didn't resist. Let myself feel the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart beneath my cheek. "Tell me what you need to feel less trapped. Tell me what freedom looks like inside the parameters of keeping you alive." His arms wrapped around me, and I felt 3 months of tension bleed out of his body. He was shaking slightly, I realized. This dangerous, powerful man was trembling because he was holding me again. "I need to finish my degree," I said into his chest. "Columbia won't hold my spot forever." "Done. I'll arrange private security for campus. I need to see my sister. She's been worried. Marco will bring her here tomorrow, and before you ask, yes, she's been under protection this whole time. I wasn't going to let them use her to get to you." Of course he'd been protecting Shannon. Of course he'd thought of everything. "And David?" I asked quietly. Alessandro's arms tightened. "What about him?" "You let him live. No retaliation. He didn't know. He touched you. For 5 seconds. Holding hands. In a public restaurant." I pulled back enough to look up at him. "Please, Alessandro. He's innocent in this." Those dark eyes studied me for a long moment, and I saw the war happening behind them. Jealousy versus my happiness. Possession versus compromise. "He lives," Alessandro finally said, "but he doesn't contact you again. Ever. And if he's smart, he'll accept the job offer. My lawyers will present him tomorrow. A position in our Hong Kong office. Generous salary. Immediate start date. You're exiling him to China? I'm giving him his life and a promotion. Most men who touch what's mine don't get either." He cupped my face again. "This is me compromising, Emma. This is me being reasonable." The terrifying thing was, in Alessandro's world, it was. I sagged against him, exhausted from the adrenaline crash, from the emotional whiplash, from fighting a battle I'd known I'd lose from the moment he walked into that restaurant. "I hate you sometimes," I mumbled. "I know." He kissed the top of my head. "But you love me more." I did. God help me, I did. "Come," he said, guiding me toward the bedroom. "You're exhausted." The master suite was exactly as I'd left it. Our bed with its silk sheets, the sitting area where I'd spent hours reading, the ensuite bathroom with the rainfall shower and the bathtub big enough for 2. "Home," my traitorous heart whispered. Alessandro released me long enough to remove his suit jacket, shoulder holster, and the phone that never stopped buzzing. I watched him move through the familiar routine. This deadly man making himself marginally less armed in my presence. "I should shower," I said, just to fill the silence. Then shower. His eyes followed me. "I'm not letting you out of my sight tonight." The promise in those words sent heat curling through my belly. I moved into the bathroom, and he followed, leaning against the doorframe as I turned on the water. The intimacy of it was devastating. Him watching me undress, me letting him. Both of us pretending this was normal. "I'm still angry with you," I said, pulling the dress over my head. "I know." His eyes darkened as I stood before him in just my underwear. "I'm still furious with you too." "Then we're even." "Not even close, Kuchela." He pushed off the doorframe. "You ran from me. You made me think I'd lost you. You went on a date with another man." Each statement brought him closer. "We won't be even until I've reminded you exactly who you belong to." My back hit the marble wall. "Alessandro!" His mouth crashed into mine, swallowing whatever protest I might have made. The kiss was possession and desperation, and 3 months of missing each other condensed into a single point of contact. His hands were in my hair, on my skin, everywhere at once, relearning territory he'd memorized and mourned. I kissed him back with equal fury, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even as my mind screamed that this was surrender. This was exactly what I'd run from. But God, I'd missed this. Missed him. Missed the way he touched me like I was precious and unbreakable and his. Always his. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Never again," he whispered. "Promise me, Emma. Whatever problems we have, whatever fears you carry, you don't run. You stay, and we fight it out, but you don't leave me again." The vulnerability in his voice destroyed the last of my defenses. "I promise," I breathed. I won't run again. The words felt like a vow, binding and permanent. Alessandro's smile was fierce and possessive. Good. Because next time, Cuciola, I won't wait 3 months to bring you home. And as he lifted me into his arms, carrying me toward the shower where steam rose like ghosts of everything we'd lost and found again, I realized the truth I'd been running from. There was no escaping Alessandro Vitale. There was only learning to survive loving him. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting Manhattan gold and copper. I woke tangled in silk sheets that cost more than my monthly rent had been. Alessandro's arm heavy across my waist, his breathing steady against my neck. For a moment, I let myself pretend this was normal, that I was just a woman waking up next to the man she loved, in a beautiful apartment with a whole day stretching ahead of us. Then I felt the weight of what I'd agreed to last night settle over me like a shroud. I'd promised not to run. I'd surrendered. I'd walked back into the cage voluntarily, and this time, Alessandro wouldn't give me the chance to find the door unlocked. Stop thinking so loud. His voice rumbled against my shoulder. I can feel your anxiety from here. I turned in his arms, finding those dark eyes already open, watching me with an intensity that should have felt invasive, but instead felt like being seen. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now? His hand traced lazy patterns on my bare back. Now I keep you safe. Now I make sure every person in this city knows you're under my protection. Now I eliminate anyone stupid enough to think they can use you against me. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant, Cuciola. He brushed hair from my face. You want to know if this is sustainable. If we can build something real when the foundation is possession, and obsession, and enough violence to drown in. The accuracy of that statement stole my breath. Can we? I whispered. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. I don't know, he finally admitted, and the honesty was more reassuring than any lie would have been. I don't know how to love you less intensely. I don't know how to not want to lock you away from everything that could hurt you. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. And what are you? A monster who loves you. Simple. Direct. True. My phone buzzed from the nightstand. The new phone Alessandro had pressed into my hand last night, already loaded with his number, Marco's number, Vincent's number, and a direct line to Alessandro's private security team. The old phone, the one with David's texts and my sister's worried messages and evidence of my attempt at freedom, had been destroyed. Alessandro had crushed it beneath his shoe while I watched, eliminating that life with the same finality he eliminated threats. I reached for the new phone, a text from an unknown number. Your belongings arrived. Marco is organizing them in the guest room for your review. V. Vincent. Always efficient. I should go through my things, I said, starting to sit up. Alessandro's arm tightened. Later. Right now, I want to memorize the fact that you're here, that you're real, that I'm not going to wake up and find you gone again. The raw need in his voice made my chest ache. I promised I wouldn't run. You promised before. His eyes darkened. The night before you left, you fell asleep in my arms and whispered that you'd never leave me. I believed you. I shouldn't have. Guilt twisted in my stomach. Alessandro, I'm not saying it to hurt you. He pulled me closer. I'm saying it because I need you to understand what it did to me. Waking up to find you gone, finding the note you left. His voice cracked slightly, all 2 sentences of it. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. That's what 3 months of love was worth to you. 2 fucking sentences. Tears burned my eyes. What did you want me to write? A dissertation on why loving you was destroying me? A detailed explanation of how every day I stayed, I lost more of myself? Yes. He sat up abruptly, the sheets pooling around his waist. I wanted you to talk to me, to fight with me, to give me a chance to fix whatever was breaking. Instead, you disappeared like I meant nothing. You meant everything. The words burst out of me as I sat up too, facing him. That was the problem, Alessandro. You were everything, and I was disappearing into you. My world had shrunk to this penthouse, to your schedule, to waiting for you to come home and hoping tonight wasn't the night someone decided you were worth killing, so you decided to kill me instead? His laugh was bitter. Do you have any idea what it's like, loving someone who can destroy you with absence? I've survived assassination attempts, turf wars, betrayals that would have broken lesser men. But you leaving? That almost did what bullets and blades never could. The vulnerability in his admission cracked something open inside me. This powerful man, this dangerous man, sitting before me and confessing that I had the power to destroy him. I didn't know, I whispered. How could you not know? He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. How could you spend every night in my arms and not know that you're the only thing in this world I can't control? The only thing I can't predict or manipulate or bend to my will, because you controlled everything else about my life. The truth came out gentle, but firm. You chose where we went, who we saw, what I wore to events. You had men following me when I left the penthouse. You monitored my phone calls with my sister. You were suffocating me with protection until I couldn't breathe without permission. He flinched like I'd struck him. I was keeping you safe. I know. But Alessandro, there's a difference between protection and possession, and you'd crossed that line so far I couldn't see it anymore. Silence stretched between us, heavy with truth neither of us wanted to acknowledge. Finally, Alessandro released my face, running both hands through his hair in frustration. So what do you want from me? To pretend I'm not what I am? To let you wander the city unprotected while people who want to hurt me look for weaknesses? To watch other men touch you and smile and do nothing? No. I took his hands, lacing our fingers together. I want you to find a middle ground between locking me in a tower and letting me get killed. I want you to trust that I can be smart about my safety without needing armed guards at the grocery store. I took a breath. I want to matter to you as more than just a possession to be protected. You do matter. As a person, Alessandro, with thoughts and dreams and a life that exists beyond being yours. He looked at our joined hands, his jaw working. I'm trying to understand, but everything in me screams to lock you away where nothing can touch you. Where you're safe, where you're mine and only mine. I know. I squeezed his hands. And I'm trying to understand that your love language is obsessive protection. But we have to meet somewhere in the middle, or this will never work. What does the middle look like? It was such a genuine question, asked with such honest confusion, that I almost laughed. Alessandro Vitale, who negotiated billion-dollar deals and commanded an empire built on violence and fear, genuinely didn't know how to compromise in a relationship. It looks like you letting me finish my degree at Columbia, I started. With reasonable security that doesn't involve armed guards in my classes. He nodded slowly. Continue. It looks like me checking in with you when I'm going somewhere, not because you demand it, but because I want you to know I'm safe. Another nod. It looks like you asking before you make decisions that affect my life. Not telling me you bought the restaurant where I work. Not moving my things without permission. Asking. Like I'm a partner, not a possession. This one made him wince, but he nodded again. And it looks like you working on the jealousy, I added quietly. I'm not going to date other men. I'm not interested in anyone but you. But you can't threaten to kill everyone who looks at me or speaks to me. That one's going to take work, he admitted. The jealousy. Emma, it's not rational. It's not something I can control with logic. When I saw you with him, when I saw his hand touch yours, his grip tightened on my fingers, I wanted to burn the world down. I still do. I know. But you have to try. For us to work, you have to try. Alessandro pulled me back into his arms, his face buried in my neck. I'll try. God help me. I'll try. But Emma, you have to understand. Some things won't change. I will always have you protected. I will always know where you are. I will always eliminate threats before they get close to you. Those aren't negotiable. I know, I whispered into his hair. I'm not asking you to stop being who you are. I'm just asking you to let me be who I am too. We stayed like that, wrapped in each other, as the morning sun climbed higher over Manhattan. Outside these walls, Alessandro's empire demanded his attention. His phone had been buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand, but for this moment, we existed in a bubble of tentative understanding. A sharp knock interrupted our peace. What? Alessandro called, not releasing me. Marco's voice came through the door. Boss, we have a situation. Romano's men were spotted near Columbia. Looks like they're positioning. Every muscle in Alessandro's body went rigid. How many? 4 that we've identified. Could be more. Alessandro's arms tightened around me protectively, and I felt the shift in him, from lover to predator in the space of a heartbeat. Lock down the building, he ordered. Get Vincent and the team here. I want eyes on every entrance, every exit. And Marco, find Romano. I don't care if you have to turn over every stone in this city. Find him. Yes, boss. Footsteps retreated, and Alessandro finally pulled back to look at me. His face had transformed into the mask I'd seen him wear when conducting business. Cold, calculating, dangerous. This is what I was afraid of, he said quietly. This is why I couldn't let you stay in that apartment. Romano's been quiet since you left. I thought maybe he'd moved on, found other targets, but now he knows I'm back, I finished. Now he knows I have my weakness back. Alessandro stood, already reaching for his phone. Get dressed. We need to brief the security team, and then you're going to tell me everywhere you went in the last 3 months. Everyone you talked to, anyone who might have seen you. The fear in his voice made my blood run cold. Alessandro. Who is Romano? He turned back to me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw something close to fear in his eyes. He's the man who tried to kill you 3 months ago, Alessandro said. He's the man whose brother I executed for betrayal, and he's the man who swore he'd take everything I love before putting a bullet in my head. My hands started shaking. The note, the one you mentioned, detailed exactly how he'd make you suffer. Exactly how he'd use you to break me before ending us both. Alessandro crossed back to me, gripping my shoulders. This is why I need you to understand. This isn't paranoia or obsession for the sake of it. There are real threats, Emma, people who would hurt you just to watch me bleed. Then we deal with them, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Together. No. His grip tightened. You stay here, where you're safe. I deal with them. Alessandro, this isn't negotiable, his voice rose. You want compromises? Fine. You want to finish your degree? Done. You want more freedom? We'll negotiate. But you do not get to put yourself in danger. You do not get to play target while I hunt threats. That's where the line is drawn, Emma. That's where I become the monster you're afraid of. I saw it then. The true depth of his fear, not for himself, for me. Okay, I said softly. Okay. I'll stay here. I'll let you handle Romano. Some of the tension bled out of his shoulders. Thank you. But Alessandro, I waited until he met my eyes. After you handle this, after the threat is gone, we go back to negotiating, because I won't live in fear forever, and neither will you. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Deal. He kissed me, hard and desperate, then pulled away to start making calls. I watched him transform into the man who ran an empire, barking orders, coordinating movements, deploying resources with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. This was the man the city feared. This was the man who could make problems disappear with a phone call. This was Alessandro Vitale in his element, and I'd promised not to run from this. From him, from the danger that came with loving a man whose empire was built on violence. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Your sister is safe. She's asking about you. Should I bring her here? M. Marco, always thinking ahead. I texted back. Yes, but don't tell her everything. She worries. The response was immediate. Boss already briefed me. She'll know you're safe. Nothing more. I looked up to find Alessandro watching me while simultaneously talking on his phone. Even divided, his attention was absolute. He ended his call and crossed to me. Shannon will be here in an hour. Vincent's bringing her. She's been under protection since you left. She just didn't know it. Thank you for keeping her safe. She's your family. That makes her mine. He cupped my face. I need to go to the office. Handle some things in person. Marco will stay with you. Vincent will return after he delivers Shannon. Don't answer the door for anyone else. Don't go near the windows. I'll be careful. I interrupted gently. I promise. He studied my face like he was memorizing it. If anything happened to you, it won't. I placed my hand over his heart, feeling it race beneath my palm. Go. Do what you need to do. I'll be here when you get back. You better be, Kuchela. He kissed me once more, fierce and possessive, because if I have to hunt you down again, I'm never letting you out of my sight. Ever. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. And as I watched him leave, surrounded by his guards, his phone already pressed to his ear, I realized something that should have terrified me but instead brought strange peace. I'd stopped running. Not because I'd given up on freedom, but because I'd finally understood that freedom without Alessandro wasn't freedom at all. It was just another kind of prison. One where I was locked away from the only person who made me feel truly alive. Now I just had to survive the danger that came with that choice. Shannon arrived exactly 1 hour later, escorted by Vincent and looking simultaneously relieved and furious. My little sister, though at 23, she hated being called little, burst through the penthouse door and crossed the marble foyer in 5 angry strides before pulling me into a crushing hug. "You absolute idiot," she hissed into my hair. 3 months, Emma. 3 months of cryptic text saying you were fine, that you needed space, that you'd explain later. Do you have any idea how worried I was? I'm sorry. I mumbled into her shoulder, breathing in her familiar scent of vanilla and coffee. I'm so sorry, Shan. She pulled back, her green eyes, so like our mother's, scanning my face with the intensity of someone cataloging damage. You lost weight. You have circles under your eyes, and you're back here, with him. Which means... Her gaze cut to where Marco stood discreetly by the entrance. Everything you ran from is still true. It's complicated. It's always complicated with Alessandro Vitale. Shannon grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the living room and away from Marco's hearing. When we were seated on the plush sofa, she gripped both my hands. Emma, talk to me. Really talk to me. Not the sanitized version you think I need to hear. I looked at my sister. Brilliant, fierce Shannon, who'd raised me as much as I'd raised her after our parents died, who'd worked 2 jobs to help put me through school, who'd never asked for anything except honesty. I love him, I said simply. I love him, and it terrifies me. And I ran because I didn't know how to reconcile those 2 things. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out if love is supposed to feel this consuming. If it's supposed to make you lose yourself and find yourself simultaneously. If... I took a shaky breath. If it's supposed to feel like drowning and breathing for the first time all at once. Shannon's expression softened. Oh, Emma. I know it's insane. I know he's dangerous and possessive and probably a dozen kinds of wrong for me. But Shan, when I was away from him, I felt like half of myself was missing. Like I was walking around with a piece of my soul torn out. That's not love, Em, that's dependency. Is it? I challenged. Or is that what real love feels like when you've only ever had the shallow kind, when you've only ever dated safe men who made you feel comfortable instead of alive? Shannon was quiet for a long moment. He had me protected, she finally said. This whole time you were gone. I didn't know until Vincent told me this morning. But there were men watching my apartment, my work, everywhere I went. Alessandro Vitale kept me safe because I'm your sister. I know. That level of care, of thoroughness. She hesitated. That's not just about possession, Emma. That's about genuinely caring what happens to the people you love. I blinked in surprise. You're defending him? I'm trying to understand him. There's a difference. Shannon squeezed my hands. Look, I'm not going to pretend I'm comfortable with this. The man runs a criminal empire. He's dangerous. He literally threatened someone last night for taking you on a date. Vincent told me about that too. He didn't hurt David because you asked him not to. But Emma, he wanted to. That's the point. His first instinct was violence, and only you stopped him. Her eyes searched mine. Is that really what you want? To be the only thing standing between Alessandro's jealousy and bloodshed? The question hit harder than I expected. I don't know. But I know I can't walk away from him again. I tried. It almost killed me. Then you need to set boundaries, real ones. Not just promises you both make and break when emotions run high. Shannon released one of my hands to gesture around the penthouse. You can't live in this gilded cage and call it love. You need a life outside of him, Emma. Your degree, your friends, your interests. I know. We talked about that this morning. And he's trying. Or he says he's trying. But there's a situation. I glanced toward where Marco still stood guard. Something dangerous. A man named Romano. Shannon's face went pale. Vincent mentioned him. Said he's the reason I needed protection. Emma, what exactly did you get involved in? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Alessandro's name flashed across the screen. How is your sister? Is she giving you grief about me? Despite everything, I smiled. She's concerned. Protective. Being a good sister. Good. That's why I made sure she stayed safe. Family protects family. When will you be back? Few hours. Romano's gone to ground. But we're closing in. Stay inside. Marco has orders to not let you near the windows. Alessandro, that's excessive. Cuciola, Romano is a sniper. He doesn't need to get close to hurt you. Please, just for today, humor me. The fear underlying his words made my chest tight. Okay, I'll stay away from the windows. Thank you, I love you. It was the first time he'd written those words. We'd said them before, in heated moments and quiet confessions, but seeing them typed out, permanent and deliberate, made them feel more real. I love you too, I typed back. Alessandro? Shannon asked, watching my expression. He's dealing with the Romano situation. He'll be back in a few hours. And until then, we're trapped in this fortress? She looked around, taking in the luxury that surrounded us. I mean, as prisons go, it's beautiful, but it's still a prison, Em. Temporary protection isn't a prison. Isn't it? When does temporary become permanent? When does protection become control? Shannon stood, pacing to the window before Marco cleared his throat. Miss Castellano, Mr. Vitale requested you stay away from the windows, for your safety. Shannon's eyebrows rose. Miss Castellano? I'm not... She looked at me. Emma, did you take his name? No. But his men, they call me that anyway. I think it's easier than explaining what I am to him. And what are you to him? Shannon asked quietly. Before I could answer, Marco's phone rang. He answered immediately, his expression hardening. Understood. Yes, sir, right away. He ended the call and looked at me. Boss wants you in the safe room. Now. My blood went cold. What happened? Romano made contact. He knows you're here. Marco was already moving toward me, his hand on the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. Vincent's pulling around with the armored car. We're moving you to the secondary location. What about Shannon? She goes too. Marco was all business now, the polite deference gone, replaced by the efficient soldier Alessandro employed him to be. Both of you come with me. Stay close, stay quiet, and do exactly what I say. Shannon grabbed my hand as we followed Marco through the penthouse. He led us down a hallway I'd never paid attention to before, to a door that looked like a closet but opened to reveal a steel-reinforced panic room. Inside, Marco ordered. Lock it from the interior. Don't open it for anyone except me, Vincent, or the boss. The code is... He rattled off 6 digits. You'll need to enter it every hour or the system assumes you're compromised and automatically alerts the police. Marco, what's happening? I demanded. His expression softened slightly. Romano sent a message, a photo of this building, of the penthouse windows, with coordinates and a timestamp from 10 minutes ago. He's here, Miss Emma. Or he was. Boss wants you somewhere Romano can't find you until we neutralize the threat. Where's Alessandro? On his way. He'll meet you at the secondary location. Marco gently pushed us toward the safe room. Please, Miss Emma. Every second counts. Shannon and I stumbled into the room. Surprisingly spacious. Furnished with a sofa, supplies, and enough technology to run a small operation. The door closed behind us with a heavy thunk, and I heard the locks engage automatically. Shannon immediately went to the bank of monitors that showed different angles of the penthouse and building exterior. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I joined her, watching the screens. On one, I could see Marco speaking rapidly into his phone. On another, Vincent's SUV pulled up to the private entrance. On a third, my breath caught. A figure on a rooftop across the street. Too far to make out features, but the shape was unmistakable. Someone with a rifle, positioned and waiting. "Oh God," Shannon breathed. "Emma, is that Romano, or one of his men?" My hands were shaking. "This is real. This is actually happening." Shannon pulled me away from the monitors into the center of the room. Okay, we're safe here. This room is built like a vault. Alessandro wouldn't put you in here if it wasn't secure. He's going after Romano. I knew it with absolute certainty. He's going to try to end this himself. That's what men like him do, isn't it? They eliminate threats. I thought about Alessandro's face this morning. The fear in his eyes when he talked about Romano. The way he'd held me like I might disappear. The confession that losing me had almost destroyed him. He wouldn't just eliminate Romano. He'd make it personal. He'd make it brutal. He'd send a message to anyone else who might think about using me to hurt him. And part of me, the part that had fallen in love with a dangerous man, was grateful for that protection, even as it terrified me. My phone buzzed. "Alessandro, you're secure? Marco got you to the safe room?" "Yes. Both Shannon and I. There's someone on the rooftop across the street." "I know. My men are moving into position. Emma, I need you to listen to me carefully. Whatever happens in the next few hours, you stay in that room. You don't come out until I personally come to get you. Understand? What are you going to do? What I should have done 3 months ago. End this permanently. Alessandro, please be careful." "I will. I have too much to live for now." A pause then. "I'm sorry, Cucciolo. Sorry that loving me means dealing with this. Sorry that you can't have the normal life you deserve. Sorry that—" "Stop," I typed quickly. "I chose this. I chose you. Whatever comes with that, we face it together." "Together?" he echoed. "I like the sound of that. Stay safe. I'll see you soon." The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. Shannon and I sat in that safe room, watching the monitors, jumping at every sound. We saw Marco coordinate with other men I didn't recognize. We saw Vincent return, speaking urgently into his phone. We saw the figure on the rooftop eventually disappear. But we didn't see Alessandro. "He's okay," Shannon said, though she sounded like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. "He's probably just being cautious, making sure the threat is really gone before he comes back." I nodded, not trusting my voice. At hour 2, my phone rang. Vincent. "Miss Emma, the boss wants you to know the situation is contained. Romano won't be a problem anymore." Relief flooded through me. "Is Alessandro okay?" "He's fine. He's handling the cleanup. He'll be there within the hour to personally escort you to the secondary location." "We can't just stay here?" Vincent was quiet for a moment. "Boss wants you moved, just as a precaution. The penthouse might be compromised. Romano knew too much about the layout. We're sweeping it now, but until we're certain it's secure, he wants you somewhere else." "Okay. Tell him I'll be ready." When Alessandro finally arrived, he looked like he'd been through war. His suit jacket was gone, his shirt sleeves were rolled up, and there was a bruise forming along his jaw. But he was alive, whole, and the moment the safe room door opened and his eyes found mine, I saw the tension bleed out of him. "Emma." My name was a prayer and a curse. I launched myself at him, and he caught me, lifting me off my feet as his arms banded around me. "It's over," he murmured into my hair. "It's over, Cucciolo. Romano's gone. His men are scattered. No one's coming after you again. You're hurt." Superficial. He got one hit in before Alessandro stopped, seeming to remember Shannon was there, before we subdued him. Subdued. Such a gentle word for what I knew had actually happened. Shannon stood slowly. "Mr. Vitale, thank you for keeping us safe." Alessandro's arms loosened around me enough to nod at my sister. "Family protects family, Miss Castellano. You're Emma's sister. That makes you mine to protect." "I'm not yours," Shannon said, but there was no heat in it. "But I appreciate the sentiment. We need to move," Vincent said from the doorway. "The secondary location is ready." Alessandro released me reluctantly. "It's just for tonight. Tomorrow, Once we've secured the penthouse completely, you can come back. Or... He looked at me. We can find somewhere new, somewhere that's ours, not just mine. A place we choose together. The offer hung in the air, significant in ways that went beyond real estate. Together. I echoed his earlier word. I'd like that. His smile was fierce. Then let's get you somewhere safe, and tomorrow, we start building something new. As we left the safe room, Shannon walking ahead with Vincent, Alessandro pulled me close. I meant what I texted earlier, he said quietly. I'm sorry this is what loving me looks like. But Emma, I swear to you, I will spend every day making sure you never regret choosing this. Choosing us. I looked up at him. This dangerous, beautiful, impossible man who'd turned my world upside down and inside out. I know, I said, and I'll spend every day reminding you that love isn't just protection. It's partnership. It's trust. It's letting me stand beside you, not just behind you, even when standing beside me is dangerous. Especially then. His kiss was gentle this time, reverent. Like I was something precious he'd almost lost, and wouldn't take for granted again. And as we left the penthouse together, surrounded by guards, heading toward an uncertain future that somehow felt more solid than any plan I'd made alone, I realized something profound. Freedom wasn't about being safe from danger. It was about choosing who you faced danger with. And I'd chosen Alessandro Vitale, with all the chaos and protection and obsessive love that came with him. Now I just had to teach him that choosing him didn't mean losing myself. But looking at his hand clasped firmly in mine, feeling the promise in his touch, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to be both his and mine simultaneously. Together. 6 weeks later, I stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows in our new apartment, not penthouse, apartment, watching snow fall over Central Park. The space was smaller than Alessandro's fortress, more intimate, with exposed brick and hardwood floors and furniture we'd chosen together. It felt like a home instead of a showroom. Behind me, I heard Alessandro's voice, low and commanding as he spoke on the phone with Marco about some business I'd learned not to ask about unless he offered. Some boundaries we'd discovered kept us both sane. Columbia had welcomed me back with surprising enthusiasm, especially after Alessandro made a generous donation to their new library. I'd learned to pick my battles. His need to smooth my path was something I could live with, as long as he didn't try to attend my classes. The security was still there, of course. Vincent drove me to campus most days, and there were always men I didn't know, scattered around the buildings where I had classes. But they were subtle now, discreet. Alessandro had learned that obvious protection made me feel suffocated, so he'd adapted. Progress. In small increments. What are you thinking about? His arms slid around my waist from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. How different everything is now. How different I am. Regrets? There was vulnerability in the question. No, I turned in his arms, looping mine around his neck. Adjustments, maybe, but no regrets. The past 6 weeks had been a masterclass in compromise. Alessandro struggled daily with his possessive instincts. I'd caught him tracking my phone more than once, had fielded calls from Marco asking my location when I forgot to check in. But he was trying, genuinely trying, to give me the space I needed to be more than just his. In return, I'd learned to understand that his need to protect came from a place of deep fear, not just control. The nightmares he had, the ones where he woke reaching for me, panic in his eyes until he confirmed I was real and safe, those told me more about his internal landscape than any conversation could. Shannon called, I said. She wants to have dinner this weekend. She's bringing someone. Alessandro's eyebrows rose. Someone? A guy from her work. She sounded happy. I traced the collar of his shirt. She also said to tell you thank you. For what? For keeping your promise. For letting her live her life without interference. Shannon had been the test case for Alessandro's growth. Could he protect family without controlling them? So far, he'd passed. Her security was invisible, and she'd only discovered it existed when she'd mentioned a coworker was making her uncomfortable, and the man had mysteriously transferred departments the next day. I told you I would try, Alessandro said simply. Besides, if Shannon's happy, you're happy. And your happiness, He cupped my face. Is the only thing that matters to me. Not the only thing. I gestured to his phone, still buzzing on the counter. Your empire matters too. The empire exists to protect what I love. You're what I love. Therefore, he kissed my forehead. You matter more. The logic was pure Alessandro. Circular and absolute, and somehow sweet in its intensity. I have something for you, he said, releasing me to retrieve a folder from his briefcase. I took it cautiously. The last surprise gift had been a car. A bulletproof, GPS-tracked, ridiculously expensive car that I'd initially refused before accepting that some protections were non-negotiable. Inside the folder were property deeds. I scanned them, confused. What is this? The building where you used to live in Brooklyn. I bought it. My heart sank. Alessandro, we talked about this. You can't just buy. I bought it, he continued calmly, and transferred ownership to a trust. For low-income housing, rent-controlled, managed by a nonprofit, no connection to me or my businesses. He watched my face carefully. You said you felt guilty, living in luxury while people struggled. This doesn't erase that, but maybe it helps? I stared at the documents, emotion clogging my throat. You did this for me? I did this for us. You needed to know that being with me didn't mean abandoning your values, that my wealth could do more than just protect, it could help. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm not good at grand gestures that don't involve intimidation or violence, but I'm learning. I set the folder down and kissed him, pouring everything I felt into it. Gratitude, love, hope for what we were building together. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, Alessandro rested his forehead against mine. There's something else, something I need to tell you before... He hesitated. Before we go any further, the seriousness in his tone made me nervous. What is it? Marco found something. During the cleanup after Romano, he led me to the couch, sitting and pulling me down beside him, evidence that Romano wasn't working alone. He had information about you, details he couldn't have gotten himself. Someone fed him intel. Someone close. My stomach dropped. Who? Someone in my organization, someone I trusted. His jaw tightened. I've handled it. They're gone. But Emma, I need you to understand. There will always be threats, maybe not as direct as Romano, but people who see you as a weakness, a way to hurt me. I can minimize the danger, but I can't eliminate it entirely. I know. I took his hands. I've known that since the beginning, Alessandro. Loving you means accepting that risk. Does it, though? He looked at me with an intensity that stole breath. Because I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting a normal life, about the danger of being with me. And I realized something. I can't give you normal. I can't give you safe. But maybe... He reached into his pocket. I can give you a choice. He pulled out a small velvet box, and my heart stopped. This isn't a proposal, he said quickly, opening it to reveal a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light. Not yet. Not until you finish your degree, until you've had time to build a life that's yours, not just ours. But it's a promise that when you're ready, if you're ready, I'll ask. And if you say yes, I'll spend every day earning that yes. Tears blurred my vision. Alessandro, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer ever if this life is too much. But I needed you to know, his voice cracked slightly, I'm not just trying to keep you. I'm trying to build a future where you want to stay. I looked at the ring, at this impossible man, at the life we'd been constructing through trial and error and stubborn determination. Can I try it on? I whispered. His sharp intake of breath was answer enough. With trembling fingers, he slid the ring onto my right hand, not the left, not yet, but a placeholder for possibility. It fits, I said stupidly, watching light dance across the stone. I had it sized 3 months ago when you first left. I thought, he laughed bitterly, I thought if I had it ready, if I could offer you something permanent, maybe you'd come back. But I realized you can't buy someone's presence. You have to earn it. So I've been trying to earn it, Emma, every day. I've been trying to be worthy of you. You are worthy, I said fiercely. You're flawed and possessive and sometimes terrifying, But you're also loyal and protective and capable of so much love it overwhelms me. You're worthy, Alessandro. You've always been worthy. He pulled me into his lap, holding me like I was the most precious thing in his world. When you're ready, he murmured against my hair. When you finish school, when you've lived enough life to know this is what you want, ask me. You ask me, Cucciolo. You decide when, and I'll wait. However long it takes, I'll wait. The reversal was significant, putting the power in my hands, letting me control the timeline. It was perhaps the most profound gesture of trust he could offer. 2 years, I said. Give me 2 years to finish my degree, to build my career, to be sure I can stand beside you as an equal, not just as someone you protect. 2 years, he agreed. And in that time, I'll prove to you that loving me doesn't mean losing yourself, that we can build something that honors both of us. We sat like that as snow continued to fall outside, wrapped in each other, and in the promise of a future we'd construct together. Shannon would laugh when she saw the ring, would demand to know all the details, would probably threaten Alessandro with creative violence if he hurt me. Marco and Vincent would continue their silent vigil, protecting from shadows. Columbia would challenge me academically while Alessandro's name opened doors I'd have to work twice as hard to prove I deserved. It wouldn't be easy. Loving a man like Alessandro Vitale would never be simple or safe or normal, but it would be real. It would be mine. It would be ours. My phone buzzed. Shannon, texting about dinner plans. Alessandro's phone rang. Marco, reporting on something that required attention. Life continued around us, demanding and complex and full of the small moments that built a relationship. I should get that, Alessandro said, but didn't move to answer. You should, I agreed, but tightened my hold on him. We smiled at each other, acknowledging the irony. Then, with coordinated reluctance, we separated to handle our respective calls, our respective lives. But I kept the ring on, and Alessandro kept glancing at it, at me, with an expression that mixed possessiveness with wonder. Later that night, after Shannon's enthusiastic response to my ring, after Marco's report was handled, after the world made its demands and we met them individually before coming back together, we lay in bed, Alessandro's arms secure around me. Thank you, he said into the darkness. For what? For coming back, for staying, for trying to build this with me despite everything. His hold tightened slightly. I know I'm not easy, Emma. I know my world is dangerous, and my instincts are possessive, and sometimes I'll fail at giving you the space you need. But I swear to you, I'll never stop trying to be better, to be worthy of you. I turned in his arms, finding his face in the dim light filtering through the windows. And I swear to you, I'll never run again. When things get hard, when you drive me crazy with your overprotectiveness, when your world feels overwhelming, I'll stay. I'll fight with you, argue with you, push back against you. But I won't leave. Not anymore. Partnership, he said, testing the word. Partnership, I confirmed. You protect me from external threats. I protect you from becoming so consumed by that protection that you forget how to live. Deal? Deal. He sealed it with a kiss that started gentle and quickly became something else entirely, a reaffirmation of everything we'd promised, everything we were building, everything we'd learned about each other in the crucible of separation and reunion. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Alessandro traced the ring on my right hand. 2 years, he murmured. I can be patient for 2 years. Can you? I teased. The man who bought my workplace because he couldn't stand me having a date? That was different. That was before we established boundaries. His eyes glinted with humor. Now I know I just have to trust that you'll come home to me. That this, he gestured between us, is strong enough to weather whatever comes. It is, I said with certainty. We are. And in that moment, wrapped in Alessandro's arms in the home we'd chosen together, the ring heavy with promise on my finger, I knew it was true. We weren't perfect. Our love wasn't safe or sane or remotely normal, but it was ours. Forged in fire, tested by separation, strengthened by the hard work of two people learning to honor both the connection and the individual. The city glittered outside our windows. Alessandro's empire hummed in the background, and tomorrow would bring new challenges, New negotiations, new moments where we'd have to choose each other again. But tonight, we were simply Emma and Alessandro, woman and man, equal partners in an extraordinary love. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.